We've all had this experience. You search for something once online, and for the next 2 weeks, the internet follows you around like an overeager salesperson. On one hand, your customers expect you to recognize them. In fact, McKinsey found that 71% of consumers expect personalized interaction, and 76% get frustrated when that doesn't happen. On the other hand, however, surveys have also shown that most people find much of today's personalization at least somewhat creepy, and a meaningful chunk will actually leave a brand over it. So the question I get from business and marketing leaders all the time is this: how do we personalize in a way that actually feels like a service without crossing the line into surveillance? Hi everyone, my name is Anthony Obioham. Today we are going to unpack a practical personalization framework that converts and creates customer experiences people actually want. Let's go back and think, why did personalization get so messy? In the last few years, we've had an explosion of AI and MarTech tools promising us one-on-one personalization at scale. Now, at the same time, regulators and big platforms are fighting over cookies, tracking policies, what's acceptable and what is not acceptable. If you recall, Google spent years trying to kill third-party cookies with its privacy sandbox, and basically now has backed away and abandoned that plan. Now you have privacy advocates, they are frustrated, advertisers like yourself confused, and most importantly, customers just feel watched. Meanwhile, studies show that 75% of consumers today find most of today's personalization methods and tactics somewhat creepy. And in fact, around 1 in 5 will tell their friends about a creepy experience. This is not a small PR problem. So as a business and marketing leader, you are in the middle of a perfect storm. Your company wants growth from personalization, regulators want restraint, and your customers are increasingly sensitive. The way out is not more data. Don't make that mistake. The way out is reframing what personalization is. How do you reframe what personalization is? I think first of all, we need to start with a mindset shift. I often tell business and marketing leaders that personalization is all about helping the customer do what they came to do faster, easier, and with less friction. That is it, nothing else. So if you think about it, let's take an example whereby you have a great hotel concierge. When you visit the hotel, they remember you prefer a quiet room. They know you like early check-in, and once in a while they might have a restaurant they recommend to you every time you are in town. Such hotel concierge is helpful and is respectful to you. Now, imagine that same concierge saying to you, you know what? We notice you usually take late night calls, so we've assumed you want quieter floor and we've adjusted your room. That's a helpful intention, but suddenly I bet you're wondering, how closely are they watching me? This is the moment personalization stops feeling like a service and starts feeling like surveillance. So the simple rule of thumb for your team to use is this: if the customer would be surprised that you know something, do not surface it in your messaging. Once you reframe personalization as a service, the next step is understanding which data actually creates value and which data creates risk. Here's the truth most teams miss. A small set of low-risk data drives the most personalization value your customers will ever experience. And a small set of high-risk data drives the most legal and reputational danger your brand can get pulled into. So instead of thinking about more data, think in terms of data hierarchy. At the base of the hierarchy, you have your contextual data, the page the customer is on, the search term they are using on your website, the device, the time of the day. Right above contextual data, you have first-party data. What they've done with you in the past, their purchase history, their browsing behavior on your website, their support history. And then comes zero-party data. This is gold. These are the preferences that the customer intentionally and proactively give to you. For example, through quizzes, profiles, and preference centers information. These three categories of data, contextual, first party, zero party, are where nearly all of your practical personalization values lie. This is the data customers expect you to use, and it really feels creepy when you use them. At the top of the hierarchy, though, are third-party data, inferred data, and sensitive categories. Third-party data are data that you buy from data brokers. Inferred data are data that you infer using third-party data or even first-party data. This type of data is where your most risk lie. Third-party and inferred data often feel unexpected to customers, and anything in the sensitive bucket can trigger real backlash or regulatory trouble. So the rule is simple. Go deeper on the data customer knowingly provide to you, and then use extreme restraint on other type of data. That is how you personalize with confidence without crossing the line into surveillance. Now, data alone doesn't make you creepy. What you do with the data is what makes you creepy. And this is where organizations are flying blind because they've established no explicit creepiness line. So if you're a business and a marketing leader, here are some practical moves you can implement in your organization. First, as a leadership team, decide what is categorically off limits for personalization. So for most brands, these include things like health, children, sensitive financial information, as well as inferred life events. For example, you have the case with a Target teen pregnancy, whereby Target inferred a teen's pregnancy from her purchase behavior and then mailed her coupons before her family even knew the teen was pregnant. Now, as a personalized model, it worked, but for the brand, it was not so positive for the brand. Second thing is that you have to separate what you know from what you say. Now, you might have a wonderful data team that is able to model all sort of data points, but that doesn't mean your marketing should spell this out. So one thing you can always do is to use a simple test like the newspaper test, whereby you ask yourself, if this personalization tactic ended up in a front page tomorrow, would we be proud to defend it? If the answer is maybe or maybe not, that is a red flag. Once you've drawn your creepiness line, your teams need something they can actually use day to day. This is where I use a simple framework called SAFE. Before you launch any personalized experience, you need to ask yourself 4 important questions. 1. Shared value. Is the benefit obvious to the customer? If the customer saw the messaging or the ad and knew it was personalized, would they say, that helps? Or would they say, that is weird? 2. Appropriate data. Are we using basic, consented, non-sensitive data? Or are we sneaking in third-party and deeply personal and inferred signal that the customer never agreed to? Third is friction and frequency controls. Are we helping the customer or are we chasing them around the internet? Gartner found that customers exposed to personalization are twice as likely to feel overwhelmed and over 2 times more likely to feel time pressured. So your frequency dial matters. Last and the fourth one is explainable experience. If the customer asked, why am I saying this? Could your team answer in one simple and respectable sentence? If you fail any of these 4 checks, you're not safe and you're probably creeping people out. So let's make this practical. Imagine a customer who bought from you 3 months ago and is back to your website today. With our data hierarchy and safe framework in mind, here is what that experience could look like. 1. On your homepage, you could highlight the category they bought from the last time and show them sizes or configuration that are actually in stock. This is contextual plus first-party data in action. Now, a small prompt could pop up asking them, tell us what you're shopping for today so we can cut the noise. If they answer, great, they've given you zero-party data. If they skip, no problem, you still treat them well with contextual and first-party data personalization. Now, later on, instead of bombarding them with retargeting ads everywhere on the internet, you send them a simple one-time email saying, you bought X 3 months ago. Customers like you typically reorder around this time. Do you want to reorder with one click? This is how you personalize using the same framework. So if you run this scenario through the same framework, you'll see how it aligns with the framework. One is shared value. Yes, it's less friction, it's more relevant. If you look at appropriate data, yes, only their past purchase was used with their consent. If you look at the frequency and the friction, one email, not a whole bunch of ads chasing them around the internet. Is it explainable? Yes. We are reminding them because they bought that item before. That's personalization that feels like a service and not surveillance or stalking. Now, here's the honest truth. You can't rely on good intentions alone when it comes to personalization. At scale, personalization will be defined by your processes, not necessarily by your best person. So I highly recommend that business and marketing leaders take the following 3 steps. First is to write a simple personalization policy, 1 or 2 pages max, that defines your creepiness line, your off-limits data, and your safe framework checks. This is not going to be a 40-page legal document. It's simply a playbook for your marketers, product managers, and agencies, digital agencies that you hire that they can use. Second, create a small review council. Anything that touches on the sensitive segments or high-risk data gets a quick review from Lego, customer experience, brand, and your data teams. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting you add bureaucracy to your processes. I'm only suggesting that you protect your downside. Third, bake safe into your workflow. Include safe questions in campaign brief, question and answer checklists, and instructions you give to your vendors. Never assume your martech vendor or digital agency shares your risk tolerance. In a world where many marketers are actually cutting back on personalization because they feel unprepared, I strongly believe that having a good governance is not a drag. I believe it is a competitive advantage. As we get to the end of this video, the last piece that we have to talk about is measurement. Okay? Now, many teams judge their personalization purely on short-term metrics, the open rates, the click-through rates, the return on ad spend, and all that. But Gartner, their research shows something much deeper. Customers exposed to personalization are likely to pay a premium, but at the same time, 53% report negative experiences, 3 times more regrets, and 44% are less likely to buy again. I know this is a paradox. You can win the click and still lose the relationship. So I encourage business and marketing leaders to track 3 layers of metrics. At the first layer, we have the classic metrics, the performance metrics, the click-through rates, the conversion rates, revenue per visit, etc. You definitely need those. But the second layer is where you start paying attention to your creepy signals. Are people unsubscribing? Spam compliance. If people are giving you comments that this feels creepy. If people are mentioning you on social media or commenting negatively on your ads. Put all this in a dashboard where your team and leadership can see them. The third layer is more about the long-term trust, the repeat purchase. What is your churn rate? What is your net promoter score? What is the brand sentiment? If personalization is truly working, these metrics should improve, not degrade, as you scale your personalization. What you choose to measure will quietly define how far your team will push the line. So feel free to experiment and listen to the feedback that these metrics provide to you. In conclusion, if you're a business or a marketing leader or a founder watching this video and thinking, okay, this is a lot of information, where do we actually start? This is a simple roadmap that I highly recommend. Take the first step. 1, audit one high impact journey in your processes. Pick a journey that matters. For example, new customer onboarding, reorder flows, a key B2B nurture sequence, and map out where exactly you're personalizing in that journey today. Run that journey through the SAFE framework and define your creepiness line. Where are you clearly adding value? Where are you overreaching? These are questions you need to ask yourself. Step 2, shift toward zero and first party data. Make it easier for customers to tell you what they want. Take advantage of surveys and quizzes, profiles, and preference center configurations, and use this data to reduce the noise for what the customers see from personalization. Step 3 is to codify and scale. Now, you have to turn what works into a simple playbooks. Train your teams, brief your agencies, your third-party digital agencies you work on. Make sure you set up your dashboards to track and monitor. Companies that get personalization right ain't just squeezing more clicks out of their campaigns. They're building brands that feel intelligent and trustworthy. McKinsey tells us that these companies generate about 40% more revenue from personalization than their peers and competitors. If you'd like me to send you the SAFE framework you can use with your team, I've linked it to the description below. So by all means, it's free. Take it, use it. If you have any questions, ask Anthony. And if you want more no hype, practical AI and MarTech guidance targeted for business and marketing leaders, hit subscribe and check out my content. Overall, personalization doesn't have to be creepy. It can be one of the most respectful and high leverage things you do for your customers by treating it as a value for consent contract and not as a data collection context. Thank you everyone and have a wonderful day.